I'm Melissa Mancini with Canadian HR Reporter TV. I recently sat down with Elizabeth Mills from Health and Safety Ontario to talk about the first year of Bill 168 in Ontario and how the legislation has affected small businesses.
The ministry's had the opportunity to go into a number of workplaces since the bill came in. A lot of those orders are very clearly addressing the presence of risk as it relates to violence and the risk assessment. And that's really the first order of the orders that have really come through. The second conversation is that the ministry's been out addressing complaints. And I think it's really important for the workplace parties, particularly in small businesses and large businesses, to recognize that the role of the inspector will not be to get into the content of the complaint. They're not going to resolve the harassment issues themselves, but they're going to arrive at the workplace and say, okay, so you were aware there was a harassment complaint registered with us. We're here to see how your process worked. What was your conversation?
How has the implementation of Bill 168 gone in the past year?
So initially, I think one of the biggest gaps that I think we've seen over the year, we're still experiencing, is it's simply raising the awareness that this legislation is here, that there's an expectation that they will have a program, a policy, a risk assessment method, and that once they actually get into it, it seems to have gone a lot easier than they thought. Larger firms who already have the infrastructure, already have the programs, perhaps even have some of the training set up already, they're introducing these new conversations into something that's already there. One of the things that we're clearly still wanting to work with small employers on is having a health and safety program, period, is something that you can do in steps, that you can take it a piece at a time, and that really when somebody approaches you about a health and safety concern, violence in the workplace is just one kind of safety concern. A healthy mind, a healthy workplace is really something that they can address. I do think the small businesses should feel encouraged that they can do this. It's better if they start sooner, start with a risk assessment, and then access the Health and Safety Ontario website and find those resources that are available to get them on the road to having a health and safety program and getting them on to have one that really can address violence in the workplace and harassment productively.
What are the next steps?
For the conversation for most small businesses, I think initially going through a generic conversation is probably more helpful. It's not necessary that a small business start with a very complex thinking through of I'm in a specific sector, it's going to be really hard for me. I think they can start with a generic tool, identify your risk assessment, and then actually showcase that your staff and you know how to work this risk assessment tool, a checklist. Because that's really the first focus that the Ministry of Labour has been able to do, is just go in and say, look, I'm here to ask if you have a process for identifying risk. They're seeing if companies have a health and safety program and that they've additionally now thought through a risk assessment. If you have both a health and safety program and policy in place and a risk assessment, you're well on your way to really being able to advance your prevention of violence in the workplace.